All right, in this video we're going to submit a form. In the previous videos we created a form, we added accessibility, and we added flow to that form, and now we're going to actually submit the form that we created. So let's log in as a regular user, and we'll go to the form we created, and the first thing we'll notice is that these fields are required. So if I try to submit the form without filling out these fields, it won't let us, which is really nice because then users won't have the ability to send forms through that are missing data. And even on the email address, we try to fill it out and we don't create a correct email address, it's going to warn us. So let's put some information in here. We're going to put Fake Street. New York. And our hobbies are definitely singing and watching TV, and we certainly want to be a professional athlete. Before we submit the form, you'll notice that we aren't specifying who we are sending this form to. The reason for that, and we'll jump over to an admin account, the reason for that is if we go to our test form, you'll notice that the first flow group is set to type all group, which means that when the user fills out the form, it's going to go to everyone in the principals group. And remember from the previous video, you can set it to send to multiple where the user selects or where the user selects one. We'll leave it at this for now. You can click here and see what users it's going to send to: John, Jude, and Terry. Okay, so let's jump back over and submit this form. When we submit this, it's going to take us to our request page where we can look over all of the requests that we sent. This is historical, so it'll hold everything that we've ever sent will sit in this spot. It'll tell you what the form is, the status of it, when it was created, and then it's going to have who it's pending on. And this is going to be really useful because it's going to tell you if you have a form that has multiple steps in the flow. So let's say it goes from the user to the secretaries to the principals to human resources. At any point, the user can click on this and see that it's pending on human resources or it's pending on secretary. So in this instance, it's pending on the entire principals group. So it's going to show all the names in there. It's pending on Terry, John, or Jude, because any one of those people can access that request and kind of take over it. You can also click View Request, and that will list out the information you put and if there's any notes. You could also cancel from here, but obviously we don't want to do that. So let's jump back over to the administrator account, and we'll refresh our page so that it'll show the pending. So now we have one pending on us, and we're going to take a look at this. Oh, something looks strange. They put Fake Street. So let's say that we want to ask them if Fake Street is correct. So we're going to request information from the user. Is it really Fake Street? That sounds fake. When we hit request, it's going to send via email back to the user who submitted the form, and then they'll log in, and so we'll do that as them, and we're going to hit refresh here. And on the My Request page, you can click the Needs Info button, and it'll take you there. You can also view the notes that the person put. Is it really fake? You can click here to provide the info. You can see when they requested it, how long ago. You will also have information pending on you now because you need to go in there and fill it out. So we have, this is us, and it's pending because it says there's information requested. John, our supervisor, says, is it really Fake Street? That sounds fake. And we'll say, I'm sorry, that was a lie. I will redo. And so we hit send. This is going to send an email to John, our supervisor, with the data we just gave to them, the information. So you'll see when we log in and we go to the example user that there's additional notes now. I asked if it was really fake. The supervisor asked if it was fake. The user said, yes, sorry, we'll redo it. So let's give them the opportunity to redo it, and we can do that by sending back to the user. Sending back to the user basically clears the flow process, so it starts over, but they have all the data in the form. They don't have to refill out the form, which is kind of a nice deal. But let's say we were on the third step of the flow. Let's say we're at human resources and we need to send it back to the user to have them fill it out. When they fill it out, it will start the flow over again, so it will go to principals in this case. Refill this out, or else. So we send it back to the user. Again, this will notify all these actions will notify the users via email. So we'll go back here and we will go to My Request page. And on the My Request page, you can see that the status was that it was sent back to the user. We can click on this and see what reason it was. We can see the notes process. So the user had asked to fill it out, and John said, you need to fill this out. So we're going to edit the request from here. You can also click it here. And so you'll notice all of the data that we put in our previous version of this is still there. So if it's a big, long, lengthy form, this information will all stay. So fixing something won't take a long time. We'll say, this is actually called Real Street. And we'll submit again. And the same process happens. It will now go and be pending on those multiple users. So if we log in, we go to the admin section here, and we go to the ones that's pending on us, we'll now see that the user refilled out the form. We'll also see that the notes that transfer through with it, so we can get the information. Now, let's not deny it here. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you deny a request, you have to give them information, and then it's done. It's just denied. But since we have the option, let's show what escalate request looks like. So if I need to, as a principal, I need to escalate this request, and I need to escalate it to the superintendent's group, which was set, you'll remember in the previous video, that's set by an administrator. Oops, I'm on the wrong section here. If you remember, when we were in the groups, we allowed this group to have an escalation group, which was escalating to human resources. Well, I wanted to escalate to superintendent. Glad I checked. You can click here and see the users that are in superintendent and say, oh, yep, example user is who I wanted to go to. Actually, let's not do example user. Let's remove from the superintendent's group, and we'll add Dan into the superintendent's group. And we need to update the flow since we changed something. So now when we go back to the one that's pending on us that the user submitted, and we go to escalate it, we're going to choose Dan from this list. So let's say that Dan is a superintendent, and we just wanted him to see this information. We needed to know if he thought this was real. Is this a real address? I need your advice. And when we hit escalate, this is now going to go to Dan via email, and Dan can log in at that point. We'll do this here. We'll go to users, and we'll look at Dan, and we'll grab Dan's email address, and then we'll log out, and we'll log back in as Dan. And you'll see that Dan has one pending on him, and then Dan gets to see all the information. He gets to look at the request sent through. He gets to see all the notes that were put through, and then he can respond with, yep, it's real. I've been there. And there. Oops. So many buttons. I've been there. So Dan will send this information. We can log out as Dan. We'll go back to example admin at example.com. And we'll get back to our test form, and you'll see that we have the form here. Now, not in this video, but in the next video, we'll talk about when we approve it and how that moves through the approval chain. So we'll leave this here and cover that in the next video, but real quick, we want to look at one last little thing, and we'll look at the user's account here, go back to the request page, and you'll notice now that it's pending back on John Smith. If we had come in here and viewed this when it was pending on Dan, we would see that it had been escalated and it was pending on Dan. So that's it for submitting a form. In the next video, we will cover the finalization of the form and what that looks like going through all of the flow process.